So, all right, now it's Melissa's turn.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Janie B. Beautiful prayer. Hi, everybody. Glad that we're all here together. And so tonight, my name is Melissa C. I'm a recovered compulsive overeater. I am in New York, in the New York area. I'm in the Hudson Valley. And for those of you who don't know me, I just want to start with like a brief. I always like to start with some sort of a brief qualification. So, um, the okay, the the thing that really brought me into this recovery, into coming to the rooms of Overeaters Anonymous, was I've got this crazy problem. I say it's crazy that I've had with food, like of all things, like food all of my life. I have battled with a insatiable, unquenchable desire for more of mostly certain types of food, right? So once I would start eating, I had no off button. Like I don't, I don't, I don't have that thing inside me that says, okay, that's enough. That's good. I get starving and then sick to my stomach. Like that's how I lived most of my life. And I did not understand for many years what it meant to have an allergy of the body and an obsession of a mind. And so that was a big problem that I didn't know what that was, right? And, for those of us that are in the rooms, we know what it is, right? An allergy of the body. It means that when I ingest certain foods or I eat in certain ways, because it's not just substance for me, you know, food is different than alcohol, and food is different than gambling. Alcohol is strictly a substance addiction, right? So alcoholics don't ever have to worry about how much milk they drink or how much water they consume. They don't drink alcohol, they don't trigger the allergic response. Gamblers aren't necessarily allergic to money. They just can't use money in ways that are not like sane, right? They can't use money for entertainment. And food addiction, compulsive overeating is kind of like both. It's a substance, but for me, it's also behavioral. So if I overeat, no matter really anything, but if I eat to stuff, I trigger that same allergic response as though if I ate a candy bar. And it took me many years to know that. And so I struggled and struggled in this disease of compulsive overeating. I had years of morbid obesity and then years where I dieted. I used all my willpower and I would look normal for a minute. But I never maintained the same weight for long. I was either gaining or losing, gaining or losing. I lived my whole life like that. I came into Overeaters Anonymous. I found out about the allergy and I found out about the strange mental twist. And basically, that tells me that even though I know I have an allergy, no, you don't. Or you can get away with it this time. Or who cares, right? For now, who cares? But I came into Overeaters Anonymous and I found out that I had both those problems. And still, I struggled because knowledge alone is not the solution. What is required is a spiritual awakening sufficient enough to override that thing inside me that tells me I don't have this problem. And that spiritual awakening, what it's done for me is it makes those alcoholic foods and those eating type of behaviors uninteresting. Like that is the only thing that can save someone like me. It's an act of providence. It means it's a miraculous intervention where God actually took away the desire. for that. So I'm not relying on my own willpower anymore. Because if you took out for me like a bakery item, actually, when I think about those items, I actually feel nauseous inside. Like I get an immediate kind of like revulsion. They really don't look good to me. And overeating, I have that same kind of thought. Like I you know, I can actually bring to memory with sufficient force how sick I feel when I've overeaten. And that's only because God has done the miraculous, right? And so I'm always excited to share because if you've experienced a miraculous intervention, like it's like, oh my gosh, I want to tell people, hello, there's a miraculous intervention here. It can happen for you. And what happened was, I took the 12 steps. I continue to live in the 12 steps. And I've been relieved of over 160 pounds, and I've lived this way now for years, which is unbelievable, right? So that's the little bit of who I am. Oftentimes I'll show my pictures. I'm not going to show them tonight. I really want to jump into step 11. I really want to get right in there because I've just shared with you what it means to have a miraculous intervention. And now we're going to talk a little bit about one of the vehicles we have for enlarging and perfecting this incredible miraculous flow, this act of providence. Step 11 is, I always say this about all the steps, but step 11 really is my favorite step of all. So we're going to jump into the AA 12 and 12. And step 11 says this: sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of God's will for us and the power to carry that out. And on page 96, it says this: we AAs or OAs are active folk, enjoying the satisfactions of dealing with the realities of life. Yep, I'm really busy with the realities of life. And it says here, like, usually the first time in our lives, like we get well, and now we've got this great bustling life. And we're strenuously trying while we're living this great life to help the next alcoholic or compulsive overeater who comes along. So it isn't surprising that we often tend to slight serious meditation and prayer as something not really necessary, right? Serious meditation and prayer. It doesn't say occasional meditation and prayer, right? Serious meditation and prayer, and that we think it's not really necessary. So the AA 12 and 12 now is going to break apart for us. What are the obstacles? Like, what are the obstacles for us in this? Why do we shortchange this, right? Well, one, we start enjoying the busy life recovery gives us, right? Start thinking, yeah, I'm the power source. I'm so busy. Let me run on my own power source. Two, I'm too busy helping other people. Hey, if you are taking, I'll just kind of give you like warning, warning, warning. If you are taking outreach calls in the morning rather than spend your own time connecting with God, yeah, I don't think you're really following the directions. And that's danger, 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 because then what you're giving other people is not what's being transmitted. You're giving just you, and you will deplete yourself. You will deplete yourself. Okay, 3, you think it's something not really necessary. We're going to circle around to that. 4, we feel it is something that might help us to meet an occasional emergency. So basically, I'm only going to use it when I'm in real trouble, right? 5, we think it's too mysterious. It sounds so like, I don't know, like, oh, this spiritual stuff, it's way too like flaky, right? Too mysterious. Or 6, perhaps we don't even believe in it. Like we've come this far and we're not even believing it. And 7, we're still clinging to the AA group. And I would substitute here, we're still clinging to our meetings. We're still clinging to our sponsor. We're still clinging to our food plan as the higher power, right? As a lot of us have had many varieties of OA life, myself included, where I worshiped my checklist. That was my higher power. I had a checklist, and if I checked off the things on my list, then I would say, oh, then I made conscious contact with my higher power. Well, that's just a checklist. That's not your higher power, right? Page 97 says this: we liked AA all right, and we were quite quick to say that it had done miracles, but we recoiled from meditation and prayer as obstinately as the scientist who refused to perform a certain experiment lest it prove his pet theory wrong. Of course, we finally did experiment, and when unexpected results followed, we felt different. In fact, we knew different, and so we were sold on meditation and prayer. And then a little further down, it says this, and I think this is really important. It says, almost the only scoffers at prayer are those who never tried it enough. So when I'm working with someone for the first, a sponsee, and they say, yeah, no, that stuff doesn't work for me, my instruction back is, well, you're going to do it until it does. Like, because everybody I know who has the kind of recovery that I value, that I look towards, that I think is like, wow, I want to get there, they all have a prayer and meditation practice. And every single sponsee that I've worked with has found those that practice it, that really say, okay, I'm going to do it, have all had this epiphany at some point, like, wow, this crap works. This is really helpful stuff. It has almost always happened that people who start off having to do it become those that love to do it. It's really just been the experience that I've seen, myself included. You know, so page 97 says, those of us who have come to make regular use of prayer would no more do without it than we would refuse air, food, or sunshine. And for the same reason, when we refuse air, light, or food, the body suffers. And when we turn away from meditation and prayer, we likewise deprive our minds, our emotions, and our intuitions of vitally needed support. Right? So if we think back to our reasons for being here, like, what's my reason for being here? Well, my mind was warped. It was warped to such a point. It says in the AA 12 and 12 in step one, I reached a point where my mind was so warped, I'm going to kind of paraphrase, that nothing but an act of providence would drive out the merciless obsession. So I'm here, an act of providence is a miraculous intervention. I'm here because I require a miracle. For me, I always say my step one understanding, yes, it's that I have an allergy of the body. Yes, it's that I have an obsession of the mind. But even more powerful and more important for me to know is I am someone who must have a miracle. If I am powerless, that means, and we say it all the time, no human power. Well, if it's not going to be a human power and it's not going to be me, what is it going to be? It's got to be something higher than that. It must be a miraculous intervention. I call it God. You can call it spirit of the universe. You can call it, any of the words, by the way, that the big book uses to mean God, right? Strength, inspiration, direction, there's lots of things that you can use. But I am someone who must have a miraculous intervention. Well, if I'm someone, who must have a miraculous intervention, it means that I'm either overly emotional or at least I'm being governed by my feelings. And I lack intuition of myself. Did not have proper intuition. My intuition just made me hungry. That's what my intuition felt like. I felt something, I didn't like it, I felt hungry, right? So, intuition is a thought that requires no conscious reasoning, it's automatic. So, my unconscious automatic response would be, no matter what was going on, would be, I need to eat. I gotta eat. Gotta eat. And if that be your case, if you're suffering from that like me, then I must have greater intuition. I must have something that's going to override that internal default system, right? So here's our benefits. Here's what we're going to get. Page 98 says this: the light of God's reality. That's our benefit, which is his strength and his grace. I love that. We're going to get the light of God's reality, right? That intuitive thing and its strength and its grace. Like God gives us favor. So there's three parts to this step, this wonderful step, step 11. The first part, one, self-examination. It's self-reflection, it's daily inventory, which when done, much like in a fifth step, right? How do we do this self-examination? We don't do it on ourselves. We don't do it alone, right? None of this program was meant to be an independent practice. This is a shared opportunity, right? So how do we do it? Just like in the fifth step, we inventory with ourselves, God, and another human being. And it's described here on this page that it gives us the development of that kind of humility that makes it possible for us to receive God's help. So for me, my humility means that I must invite other people into my crazy, into the inner workings of this mind. And I believe that really strongly. I believe that inventory is meant to be shared, right? It's meant to be shared. And so it's self-reflection, it's self-examination, 2, meditation, and 3, prayer. Those are the 3 parts to step 11: self-reflection, self-examination, I should say, meditation, and prayer. And there's a direct linkage, it says here, among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. They're directly related. Taken separately, these practices can bring much relief and benefit, but when they're logically related and interwoven, the result is an unshakable foundation for life. I love that. That's another promise. We're getting here. Listen to this promise: an unshakable foundation for life. Amazing. So if I have a strong daily inventory practice and I follow it up with meditation and prayer, then no matter what happens to me, what happens around me, what happens to the people I love, right? I'm unshakable. Doesn't mean I don't get upset, but it means that my intuition is not telling me go eat because something happens to me. That's an unshakable foundation for life. So, and what I say is this is how people remain abstinent and recovered, regardless of life being lifey, right? Life is going to get lifey. It's not always like this. And if every time life presented a challenge, I found myself back in the food again, I do not have an unshakable foundation for life. I must have an unshakable foundation for life because I'm living life, right? That's the life I'm living. So here's my experience, right? I mean, I've got like countless experiences, but here's like probably the most recent one, And if you're tired of hearing it, I'm sorry. This is like the big important thing in my life. But my mom passed in April, you know, major. And I know, like, I'm not unique in that. But God, it felt unique to me. You know, I'm the only me that's experiencing the loss of my mother. And I know that is a shared experience with lots of fellows here. But I have an unshakable foundation. What does that mean? It meant that in the mix of all that, when life got lifey, and the players in my world, my siblings, you know, even my mom, even the people that worked in her facility, even, right, all my brother-in-law, like all the players in my life, I had to inventory whatever was going on so that I don't lose it with the people in my life, right? So what do? I inventory it. I share it with my fellows, people whom I can share this with. I go to God, right? And I pray and meditate. And that, you know, has allowed me to walk through probably the most difficult thing of my life without one extra morsel of food, without one stray, you know, bite, no cookies. How did I get through that without a cookie? You know, um, page 98 says this, and I think this is the $1,000,000 question, right? So now you've told me it's so unshakable, it's so important. Well, here's the big question. How then shall we meditate? How am I going to meditate? And I got to tell you, I love this program because, like we said in the intro to our meeting, you know, that I believe that people get well when they're given like clear direction, good information, clear direction. Yes, in a loving, supportive environment. So we're going to get a clear direction. We're telling you, okay, how am I going to meditate? Well, here you go. The world's libraries and places of worship are a treasure trove for all seekers. Return to your own religious connections. If you're less fortunate, we're given a very good prayer, right? So if you don't have your own necessary religious conviction, right? You don't have one of your own. It says, great, go to the library. Can you imagine? Go to the yes, go to the library, take out a book. You know, for me, yes, places of worship, explore worship. Use a app. There's apps. Look it up on YouTube. Go to Insight Timer. I mean, there's tons of different resources, and we're told here, you know, it's a treasure trove. Search it out. Be a seeker. It talks about seeking.
Don't have water. There it is.
Oh,
There we go. Okay. So now it says this here. If you're less fortunate, well, here's a good prayer. Ready? The St. Francis prayer, page 99. Lord, I'm going to read the prayer. It's one of the ones I say every day. I think it's just a beautiful prayer. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds, it is by forgiving that one is forgiven, and it's by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen. And now we're actually being given directions. Not only now, okay, here's a prayer you can try if you don't have a practice, but now I'm being given directions for how to use this prayer in meditation, right? And so it says here, 1, read it slowly and savor every word. So, like, read it real slow to yourself. Really savor every word. Take in the deep meaning of each phrase and idea. Drop all resistance. For in meditation, debate has no place. So that's where you're going to have to use some willpower. Because if you start thinking, this is hokey and weird, you're going to have to use willpower and say, drop the resistance, drop it, right? Relax. It says here too, relax and breathe as though you're laying on the beach in the sun. Use your imagination to visualize the oceans, the horizons. And, you know, I love my own practices of visualization. And I figured I'm just going to share some of mine here, right? Um, Take what you want and leave the rest. You don't have to take any of this. But I like to vision a meadow. I think about a meadow on a beautiful, warm spring day. Perfect weather, light breeze. I envision a meadow. I think about the smells that I might smell in that beautiful meadow, the soft grass. Like I can use my powers of imagination. You know, another visualization that I like is lying in a high mountain field. I picture being in the mountains, gorgeous mountains with like super blue sky, not a cloud in the sky, gorgeous sun, that incredible intense blue, and and that there's a field there, you know, and I'm in that field in this gorgeous mountain. You know, another visualization that I love is I imagine being on the beach. I love the beach. I love the ocean. And I imagine my feet barefoot with the sand in between my toes, that warm, wet, perfect temperature, perfect texture of the sand. You know, another visualization that I really love to do is I think about people whom, one, I like to think about people who I love. I might also think about people who I'm having a difficult time with. I think about people whom I just as an acquaintance. And in my visualization practice, I'm closing my eyes and I envision maintaining eye contact with that person right in front of me. And it's really helpful if it's somebody that like you're saying the sick man's prayer for, someone that you're struggling with. Really try to envision. By the way, this is not my own. I did not create this. I got this right out of a meditation, but it felt so good that I keep on doing it, right? So I'm plagiarizing big time. Um, but I envision the person I'm having difficulty with right in front of me. And we're looking at each other eye to eye. And I'm smiling at them and I'm sending them all the love that I can send to them. And remember when I feel that resistance, like I don't want to, I can retrain myself to really maintain that loving eye contact with that person, right? And I can think about the St. Francis prayer that I want to understand them, that I want to love them, right? Those are some of the things I do. I also love to visualize floating in the ocean, laying in my back, floating in the ocean, feeling the sun on my face, just like bobbing up and down. You know, I envision being on a cloud, just like laying in a cloud. I mean, I can use, right, all these things. You want to think it sounds hokey, it sounds crazy. Try it. See if it doesn't help you, right? Try some of these things. You know, when I read the spiritual experience in the back of the text, was it said there's a line that says, like, the only bar could be like contempt prior to investigation. So try not to have a contemptuous attitude. This is not beneath your consideration. I had to tell myself nothing here is beneath my consideration because I ate myself up to over 300 pounds. So I should keep my mind wide open to crazy because guess what? I've lived crazy before. And this is a nice crazy, right? This is a helpful crazy. If it is crazy, hasn't turned out to be so crazy. So remember our powers of imagination and how we once used it in creating the wrong kind of realities. Now I can use it to create the right kind of reality. Page 100 says this: perhaps our trouble was not that we used our imagination. Perhaps the real trouble was our almost total inability to point imagination towards the right objectives. There's nothing the matter with constructive imagination. All sound achievements are based upon it, rest upon it. After all, no man can build a house until he first envisions a plan for it. Meditation is like that too. It helps to envision our spiritual objective before we try to move towards it. So if I want to feel like, remember, if I want to get like, I want to get love in my heart for some people, well, I got to envision it before I'm going to feel it. I know I'm not building a house, right? I get it. I'm not building a house, but I am building my life. We're told, right in the doctor's opinion, it says that we're going to have to like have our grounded in a power greater than ourselves. My ideals have to be grounded in a power greater than myself if I am to rebuild my life. Prayer and meditation is about the rebuilding of my life. My meditation helps me know what God's plan is for me. Because I'm not the great planner, right? I want to be, but it's really God. I just want knowledge of his plan. And then here we go. We're redirected to put our minds back on that beach or mountains. So if I start drifting off, come back to the beach or mountain. And now let's look back at the prayer. Read it again. Number 3 says, read it again and think about its essence. Now really think about it. First of all, he wanted to become a channel. Then he asked for the grace to bring love, forgiveness, harmony, truth, faith, hope, light, and joy to every human being he could. So let's think about a channel, right? Because if we're asking to be a channel, well, a channel is this, like I look it up. There's lots of definitions. A channel is a band of frequencies used in radio and television transmissions, especially as used by a particular station. So it's like I'm going to tune it in, tune it in. I'm going to tune in my channel. All right, another idea of a channel is a medium for communication or the passage of information, right? The proper channels, the proper means, the proper medium, the proper way. A channel can also be an electric circuit, which acts as a path for a signal, like an audio channel. And I think about that. I want to be that channel. I want to be that circuit. I want to be the pathway. I want to be a passageway for God's love to flow into the world, right? From God, through me and out. And so, I have here written down, give the example, Melissa, of how prayer and meditation practice helped in your life. So, and it's like rotating all the time, but I have one that I'm thinking about because my son just left. He went back to college. He was home for the weekend. And I think it's miraculous what happens sometimes when children grow up and the things that we've experienced. But when my son was little, he went through a period of time where he was really suffering with anxiety, horrible. He didn't want to go to school. It was gut wrenching. The kid would like cry and carry on. I would have to like drive him to the middle school. I had like the guidance counselor and the school psychologist on speed dial because they would meet me in the parking lot to pry this kid out of the car. I mean, it was horrible to go to work. It was horrible for him. It was horrible for me. He's such a good boy. He would be like crying and hitting himself. But I knew as a mother, I would pray. And my God, I felt very directed. You got to get this kid to school. He cannot stay home. It is not good for him. So I would do it. And it would kill me. I mean, I would be a mess. And one morning in particular, he's crying before we're leaving the house. I'm starting to cry. But I pray and meditate because I always pray and meditate. And what I got loud and strong in my prayer and meditation was tell him about faith. Tell him, share with him about God, right? And he kind of rolled his eyes at me for a second. The kid, he was like 13, whatever. And he said, "You're not even helping me. You don't help me. You're not doing anything for me." And to me, he was saying, and I said, "I know, honey." I said, "But I'm going to tell you what I am doing for you. I'm praying every day because I'm not sure what to do. But I do believe that God does know what to do. So my prayer for you today, and I prayed this, was that you can feel God with you in school today. I want you to feel the presence of God with you in school. And I pray that God finds you in school today." And that really was my prayer, right? I left him hysterical, screaming, almost like drooling in the parking lot at school. Guidance counselors dragging him out. I get to my own classroom and I get a phone call from from his English teacher who said, "Hey, I just want you to know, like, I noticed Brady, and what can I do for him? Is there something I can do to help him with school?" And I didn't necessarily have the answer, but what I got was, okay, God is showing me he is in that school right now, right? Like somebody was reaching out to this kid. Little while later, another teacher reached out to me and said, "He's such a great kid. I noticed that like once he gets like in the room and gets busy, he seems like he's fine. Is there something like here's another teacher who's like reaching out to me again." Like I kept getting these inclinations that he really wasn't alone in school, right? The end of the day, I we get back home together and I asked him, like, "How was your day?" And he said, "Mom, it was okay." He said, "I want to tell you something." He goes, "It's really weird, Mom." He said, "I kept hearing," and he starts humming this tune that he said he kept hearing. And it and I'm like, "Wait, what?" And he's humming it to me. And it was like an old, I grew up Jewish and my son had some, pieces of Jewish education. It was a song that was all about like, there is none like our God. There is none like our Lord. There is none like our King. Right? That was the song that he was humming. He didn't even know the words, but he's humming it. So, you could believe what you want to believe, but I believe that my prayers were answered. No, I didn't know what to do for him as far as his school anxiety. And he continued with school anxiety for a long time. But we both knew, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that there was something God was with my kid in that school that day. He found it through people. I get the chills when I think about that. So I'm a believer. I know, I know that prayer works. I have had many other situations just like that. And I'm not unique in that because when I speak to other fellows, like I hear this stuff all the time. For people in the outside world, that sounds like what? But for those of us who have had an act of providence, a miraculous intervention, like, yeah, that's all the time, right? We get that. So we want to experience some of this for ourselves, right? It says next, we want to experience some of this for ourselves. We should desire forgiveness, harmony, truth, faith, hope, light, and joy. How will we experience these treasures? Well, by self forgetting. That's what it says, which is to give comfort rather than to receive it. Better to understand than to be understood. Better to forgive than to be forgiven. So we experience all these things, all the things that we're looking for, all these gifts, when we're actually more concerned with giving the gifts to other people than receiving them for ourselves, right? Meditation allows us to live more closely aligned with God's will for us. We're encouraged to explore this and see it as this. Page 101 says this: meditation is something which can always be further developed. It has no boundaries, either width or height. Aided by such instruction and example as we can find, it is essentially an individual adventure, something which each one of us works out in his own way, but its object is always the same: to improve our conscious contact with God, with his grace, wisdom, and love. So here's what I love this part, right? I say, I may have really tight parameters around what I'm allowed to eat, but here's where tasting and trying out things is encouraged. It's my own personal adventure. Prayer and meditation is the buffet that I can sample from freely, freely. Page 102 talks about prayer and says the third component of step 11. Prayer is the raising of the heart and mind to God. And in this sense, it includes meditation, how we may go about it, and how does it fit in with meditation. Prayer is commonly understood. It's a petition to God. Having opened our channel as best we can, we try to ask for those right things of which we and others are in greatest need. And we think that the whole range of our needs is well defined by that part of step 11, which says knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry it out. So what do I ask God for? I ask God for knowledge of his will for me. Not, God, here's knowledge. I want you to have knowledge of my will for you. And by the way, you get the power to carry that out, please. Thank you very much. Right? The other way around. I ask God, please show me what you want. And then help me do it. Right? So I'm asking for knowledge and strength. And it says this in the morning. What do? In the morning, we think of the hours to come. Perhaps we think of our day's work and the chances it may afford us to be useful and helpful, or if some special problem that it may bring. So for me, I have very specific workplace prayers. I pray, at times, especially when I've had difficulties with administrators, I would pray for my administrators. When I don't like the decisions that the school board's making, or even in general, I pray for my school board. I pray for the superintendent. I pray for my colleagues. I pray for my students. I specifically ask God, one of my prayers is, God, please come into the classroom with me, show me what they need to learn, and help me instruct them in the ways that is going to be most effective. And I have to tell you, my instructional practice has improved like never before. I'm no longer overly concerned with what everybody else thinks I'm doing, but I'm more concerned with doing what I think God wants me to do. Right? And it changes the whole nature of how I engage with my work. Really does. Page 102 says this: our immediate temptation will be to ask for specific solutions to specific problems and for the ability to help other people as we've already thought that they should be helped, right? So my prayer would have been, okay, God, get my kid to like school, get my kid to stop his crying, get my kid. And that sounds really like, okay, of course I would want that. But actually, have to be careful because that's asking God to do it my way. We're not really supposed to do that. So even if my motives are good, I'm always reminded that I am not to play God. Thinking back in my own life, I would imagine that many of my own unanswered prayers were actually for the greater good. God's plan is infinitely better than anything I could have imagined. And here, it sort of came to me, but one of the great gifts that happened for my son in particular, he's an amazing student. Thank you, God. Today he's doing wonderfully. But I think that whole experience from him helped him form really good relationships with certain teachers. That was a gift. He actually found a love for music through that because when he played back then, he was playing the flute a lot. When he played the flute, he quieted himself. He discovered something that helped get like the rambly crazies calm in his own brain, right? And funny enough, I was trying to teach him about breathing, about mindful breathing. Well, he picked up an instrument and that seemed to go hand in hand. And with that, he developed really close relationships with his music teachers and with other kids in the music room. Those are like his besties. They all play music together. He got a gift. Now he makes music all the time, right? So, my unanswered prayers perhaps turned out to be a wonderful gift for this kid. And what do I really ask God for today? To bring me more love and tolerance for all my difficult situations. I ask for strength to carry out his will for me. Right. As the day goes on, if something upsets me, right, what do I do? Well, if at these points our emotional disturbances happen to be great, we will be more surely keep our balance provided if we remember and repeat to ourselves our particular prayer or phrase that has appealed to us in our reading or meditation, just time saying it over and over. Many people say it's like a mantra. We come up with something that we can say that helps us, that grounds us, that brings us back to that place of calm and knowing. It says like saying it over and over to help clear the channel choked up with anger, fear, frustration, or misunderstanding. And it permits us to return to the surest help, right? That we can get, that we can feel God. And one of the practices that I've done is I've set a timer on my phone. It goes off during my school day. It goes off every hour on the hour. And it's my prayer reminder. And I have to tell you, it has saved me from like screaming at a kid unnecessarily. Something will happen. Or like what happens is my prayer reminder always seems to go off right at the perfect time. I breathe in. I always thank God. Thank you, God, for my job, for these beautiful children in front of me. I open my eyes, I look at them, I calm myself down, and I realize, like in that moment, I realize, okay, Melissa, chill out. They're 7. They're 7. They're 7 years old. Chill out. Right. So, page 103 and 104 discusses again why we can't pray for specific outcomes, even though it's tempting. You know, why can't I pray for specific outcomes? Because we form ideas as to what we think God's will is for other people. And that's not my role to think I know what God's will is for other people. And so we're to pray that God's will, whatever is to be done for others as well as for ourselves. And for me, when I read that, I'm reminded about the necessity for humility and to not believe that I can know God's great plan. We're reminded about how to go through life's certain difficulties. Page 105 says, out of every season of grief or suffering, when the hand of God seemed heavy or even unjust, new lessons for living well learned, new resources of courage were uncovered, and that finally, inescapably, the conviction that God does move in mysterious ways his wonders to perform. So, what do we get from meditation and prayer? Well, I love this. Here we go. Perhaps one of the greatest rewards of meditation and prayer is the sense of belonging that comes to us. God, I always wanted to feel that sense of belonging. Well, here we get it. We're no longer living in a completely hostile world. We are no longer lost and frightened and purposeless. The moment we catch even a glimpse of God's will, the moment we begin to see truth, justice, and love as the real and eternal things in life, we are no longer deeply disturbed by all the seeming evidence to the contrary that surrounds us in purely human affairs. We know that God lovingly watches over us. We know that when we turn to Him, all will be well with us here and hereafter. And I just love this. I feel like I belong. I feel like the world isn't so damn scary and out to hurt me. I feel like I'm exactly where I'm meant to be, and I'm not afraid. I have purpose, I have direction, and I have an important job to do. I feel God with me, and that leaves us safe and protected. And with that, I will pass.
Oh my gosh.